Welcome back, everybody. If your online business is spending millions of dollars a month acquiring customers through paid install channels, you need to know what percentage of those paid installs are already known to your business, meaning what percentage of those installs have already been bought by you before. So in the analysis behind me, we're looking at the cumulative count of installs along with the cumulative percentage of which are already known to this online business. So in this example behind me, we have an online business that has bought 100,000 installs, and of those, 18% of them have been bought or repurchased or reacquired, meaning you spent $5 to buy a customer, and then at a later date, you spent an additional $5 to acquire the same customer. So I'm going to show you how to replicate this exact same analysis in MySQL. So let's head over there now. Okay, so we're going to start with a very generic installs table. So in this table, we have installs, and as part of each installation, we have the customer, the device, or the device ID they installed on, the install date, and install date time, along with some other fields to add additional context. So let's go ahead and just bring in the customer ID, the device ID, and then the install date. And let's take a min on device ID. We can just rename it device ID. And you don't typically need to do this, but we're doing it just in case a customer installed twice on the same date with two different device IDs. So let's go ahead and group this data. And in addition to this, when we do this analysis, we're only interested in looking at paid installs. So we'll do where install type equals paid. And let's just run a few records. Okay, great. So we have each customer, their install date, and the device ID value they installed on. So this identifies the device. Okay, so let's call this entire subselect customers. And let's not forget to bring up those fields. Okay, so here's our progress so far. What we want to do now is join back to the installs table, and we want to do it on the customer ID, and where the install date from table 2 is less than this value here, because what we're trying to figure out is, by this install date, has this customer had a previous install date? So we'll be answering that through this join right here. So we'll do left join over to fact player installs. You can just call this installs. And we're going to do it on the customer ID equals the installs.customer ID. And then the install date from table 2. So installs.install date has to be less than the install date from table 1. And as we did in this subselect here, we're just looking for paid installs. We want to exclude organic installs. So we will do install type. So the records from table 2 all have to be paid installs. Okay. So let's consider this logic again. Here's the data that we have so far. And what we want to accomplish with this join is say, for this customer ending in 933, by this install date, have they installed at a time previous to this install date or historical to this install date? If so, we're going to flag that record and say, hey, this customer has already installed before, so they're being reacquired again. Okay, so from table 2, let's bring across if they've installed before, let's bring across their most recent install that would have happened prior to this install date here in table 1. Most recent install date. And then what we can also do is just do a count of install dates that happened prior to this date. And that'll tell us how many total historical installs that have happened. And then if you're curious, we can just look at if they installed previously or previous to this install date here, were they installing on this same device ID value or was it on a completely different device? Maybe a new iPhone or a new iPad. So we'll do device ID here. We can just go with the min. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and group this data up. And let's check a few records. Okay, great. So we can just look at the first row. We have this customer ending in 5580. They installed on October 29, 2023 on this device. But they also installed previous to this installation. So they got reacquired. So they also installed March 10th, 2023. So they installed March 10th, 2023, and then 7 months later on October 29, 2023. And you can see that they've installed twice, once on this original record and then on March 10th, 2023. So one time historically. So 2 total times. This current record and then this additional time, March 10th, 2023. And if you look at this device ID does not match this device ID. So it means that this unique customer was purchased twice as a paid install, but in each of those acquisitions, they came in on a different device. Maybe the first time on an iPhone and maybe the second time on an iPad. Cool. So let's go ahead and aggregate this information to the install date level. So we'll go here. We'll do ag.install date. And if we literally just do a count of records, this will just be installs, right? And then all we need to do is write a case statement. Case when ag.total historical installs is greater than 0, then 1, else 0 end. And we can call this installs reacquired. Let's go ahead and group that. Fantastic. So here's our data. The next thing we want to do is we want to do this cumulatively, or have a running total of both values, the total cumulative amount of installs and the cumulative percentage that have been reacquired. So let's do that. We can call this entire subselect cum. And we'll do something like this. We're going to utilize two window functions to do this. We're not going to partition by anything. We're just going to order by the install date. So we will do cum.install date. And then we'll do sum cum installs over and just order by the install date. Those cumulative paid installs. And we want to do the same thing, but for the installs reacquired field. All right, and we're essentially done. Because it's a window function, we don't need to group by anything. So put a semicolon here, and we have our query. All right, so here's our cumulative data. Let's go ahead and move this over to Excel and create our analysis. Okay, so here in Excel, all we need to do is just create one new column, and it's just going to be % paid installs reacquired. I'm gonna call this install date, just paid installs. And we're ready to build our chart. Let's change our chart type. Turn that into an area. Do a percentage. Okay, cool. So what we've done is for this online business, we've returned the cumulative count of paid installs along with the cumulative percentage of those installs that have been acquired more than once. This is super insightful information for mobile games companies or large online businesses who invest a substantial amount of money monthly to acquire customers. You need to know what percentage of those customers are being bought over and over again. And in this online business, it's 18%. So that's pretty substantial and should be taken into consideration before deploying more user acquisition or marketing dollars. Now, if the customer is being bought and repurchased on different devices, there's not very much you can do. But if you find out you're buying the same customer over and over and over again on the same device, what you can do is ask that your marketing department blacklist devices that are already known to your business. I hope this tutorial was helpful. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you very much.